Welcome to MR Unlimited. I'm Drew, this is Mario. Today we are bringing you a new project and it's all about
2006 TRX450R Honda. We're going to assemble the whole engine, but today's video is just for the bottom end.
Yeah, we've already got it set up. I'm going to jump on the GoPro and bring you guys some close-ups. Let's get started. So this one's all set to go?
This one's all set to go. I already installed all the bearings and I put assembly lube in each of the bearings. So we're all good here. Now we're going to move on to the right hand case. We have it on the hot plate, getting it nice and warm. We have the bearings in the freezer and we're going to install the bearings next.
So heat the case, not the bearings. Bearings get chilled in the freezer. Let's go grab those.
Correct.
Lit.
So Mario just pulled the bearings out of the freezer.
Yep, so we're getting ready to install these into the case. One thing I want to talk about is I only use OEM bearings. We're working on a Honda, so I'm using Honda.
And you got the part number right there for us, so why don't we get a shot of that? Perfect.
I only use Honda because I've had really good luck. I don't want to have bad luck. So we have this on a hot plate. We're getting it nice and warm. It's borderline, you can't touch it. So I recommend a pair of gloves. I'm going to grab my leather gloves right now. I just use a pair of welding gloves.
Oh, these aren't the heat resistant rubber gloves?
They are not. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to grab the gloves quickly and then we're going to go in and install. Always refer to a service manual. Best thing you can do if you're going to get into one of these engines is to buy the service manual. This happens to be a 2006. 2006 to 14 are virtually the same. They did make changes to the camshaft in 2008 and newer. So pick yourself up a service manual for torques, sequence of bolts, tightening of bolts. So don't just rely on, if you see me just tightening something, I've put so many of these things together. A lot of this stuff is low torque and feel, but you do want to refer to the service manual for a torque spec.
And I'm sure that feel just comes with years of doing it.
It does. And ideally here, we're heating the case up and we're, put those in the freezer to be cold. Ideally, you want these to go in, as easy as possible. You're going to run into instances where they're not going to go in that easy. I mean, that's what we want.
Slide right in.
But sometimes they don't, and to tap on it lightly is acceptable. You just don't want to be beating on anything.
Mario rests the case on just a wooden block.
Yeah,
just because you don't want to damage that aluminum case.
So you can see that this one, I just have to, it's not square in there.
And he's gently tapping, he's not giving huge whacks of the hammer.
Yeah, you want to go nice and easy. Sometimes you'll find too, you got to flip this to put the counter shaft bearing in. And when you go to do this, and if you have to lightly tap on it, the other ones will fall out sometimes. But in this case, everything went in.
Say it like Borat.
Very nice.
Very nice. I like you.
So now what we're going to do, we'll let this sit for about, I don't know, 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and let the case cool down so that we can put all our retainers in there with the Loctite. If you try to do it now, the Loctite's not going to harden up. It's going to run right out of the threads, and we don't want that.
Mario's got the case back over on the bench. The bearings actually went in fairly smooth.
Yeah, everything went good there, and the case is cooled down. So now we can assemble and put the retainers in with the Loctite and torque them.
Show us what to do.
I'm going to get our torque wrench out. These are set, these retainers in here, all the small ones are set for 9 foot-pounds. I use red Loctite, so you have no issues here with anything falling out.
And red Loctite is a high temp Loctite, correct?
They make two different versions. You can use either or. The engine doesn't get, I mean, it gets hot, but it doesn't get to the point where it's gonna make the Loctite drip out and not do its job. You do need to make sure that the bolts are nice and clean. Use brake cleaner in the threads along with inside of the case so that it can hold good. Otherwise, you're gonna have an issue and it's gonna loosen up.
Tell us a little bit about this engine and the history Honda had with the TRX450.
So they started in 2004, 2004 and 5 were essentially the same engine. They did update the crankshaft in 05, and then in 06 they changed the transmission, they changed the cases, pretty much the whole engine was redesigned. 06 and 7 virtually the same. 2008 to 14 they changed the camshafts.
What's the best year engine in your opinion? You would think each revision gets bugs worked out, but...
Well, you would think, but quite frankly, the engines are the same from 06 to 14, except for the camshaft that they took over from the dirt bike. They started using the dirt bike camshaft and rocker arm assembly. The engines are, like I said, they're virtually the same thing.
Yeah, that was very common as well with the 400EX and the XR400. I know those both shared the same
internals.
Basically,
yeah.
The 400EX had electric start, whereas the XR400 did not. It was a kickstart only.
Correct. Yeah, these.
What year did the TRX motor go to electric? Were they ever electric?
Yeah, oh yeah, they're. I believe it's 07. I might be wrong with this. It might be 06 and up. Quite frankly, you could get them electric start and kick.
And I still see those poor bastards on the starting line at the local races with their foot on that kickstart, ready to go, ready for that flag to raise.
Yeah.
And everybody else that just hits the hot button is usually gone before them.
Yeah, they're still out there. A lot of people love these engines. I mean, they are a good engine. The parts are, fairly readily available. I mean, really, this time in life we're struggling. Everybody's struggling on parts, but generally speaking, there's so many of them out there, and the year spread is so wide that you can find all kinds of stuff for these.
So Mario's just torquing down these tabs that hold in your bearings. And what did you say the reading was on that?
This is 9 foot-pounds for these lock tabs.
And again, we're not going to quote him on every spec. A lot of it is just from doing
your due diligence and look into a service manual to make sure. What we're getting into now is the right side bearing retainers. Now on the left side, these are stock retainers. The bolts are not. The bolts I use are 6x1 thread, and they're ARP bolts. I get them from Summit Racing. I think Jeg sells them. There's a few other places, but the retainer's not a problem on this side, but I do use the better bolt. This side though, the case gets machined and we use these heavy duty retainers. You have to thread the case, and instead of the bolt coming from the underside into this like that one is, this bolt comes through the face. Again, you want to use quite a bit of Loctite on this, on both of these bolts, so you don't have any issues.
What's quite a bit look like? Yeah, we got a good dab on there.
Yeah.
While Mario's tightening this down, I want to remind everybody, hit that subscribe button. We plan on bringing you a lot more projects like this one, and we'll break it into parts so it's easier to watch, easier to follow along. Today's video is just going to be this lower end, and what's part 2 you think?
We're going to do the right side case, like installing the clutch, all the drive gears, the shifting components, and
build our way from the bottom up basically.
Yep.
And the final video
will be the top end, installing the piston, cylinder, head, showing some basics on, I'm going to have the valve clearance set, but we'll explain how that goes.
Yep.
And install the cam chain and stator side.
Yeah, and then once we get it running good, we're going to install it in his grandfather's lawnmower because
Sure.
he's complaining that it's too slow.
It's too slow, right. I'm sure he'll love that. I'm going to torque these to 25 foot-pounds. All right, now onto this side. This is the other side of that bearing retainer. There's lock washers. We're also going to put a little bit of Loctite on this side. Sometimes it's hard to put a little bit, but that's what we're after.
So it's fairly simple. You're just, putting bearings in holes and retaining them with a couple of tabs and screws. I mean, there's not a whole lot to it other than the torque specs. You don't want to damage any part of the case.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into an engine and showing disassembly and looking at all the components as we're pulling it apart. And people will get a better idea at that point. But
what kind of engine? Your wife's car?
No, we're going to be doing another one of these. It's a 14, which is virtually the same thing. But
oh, was that Eric's?
Yep, that he dropped off.
Yep.
The thing that we're going to be after, though, there too, that I want to make mention of is when you're taking these apart, I get 4 bins. Right side goes in one, left side goes in another, top end goes in one, and then lastly is all the center section. That way you clean everything, everything is in the bin. When you go to put it back together, as you're putting things back together, if something's left in the bin, you know that it's retained, it's pertaining to what you're doing. You don't want to jumble everything up. Another good way of doing it too is that, and some of these pieces are kind of intricate with the shifting, oil pumps and such. You can even split it down even further with Ziploc baggies and like that. You want to make it so that when you go to put it back together, it's foolproof, along with using the service manual for guidance.
And show us one of these bins. I see you got a stack over here.
So this is the top end for this engine, and it's all been cleaned. We put all the new parts along with, there's the old parts in baggies, but all the new parts are in each bin so that, you're making sure, you're inventorying each bin, making sure that whatever you have estimated, you're replacing and putting the new parts in each bin. We're going to torque these to 15 foot-pounds. Usually I'm just feeling this out, but I'm just trying to show that, this is the right way of doing it. Because you're keeping track of, if you just go back and you're tightening stuff, you get confused sometimes. You don't know where you stop and start. So if you go and you torque everything, okay, you're good, and then same thing. Another thing I've been doing for years is paint pen. Now that we're done with this, I'll just put a little bit of marking on it.
That's factory.
Well, it could be, yeah. The reason here, again, is if you stop for some reason, all of a sudden you got a part that's wrong, or for whatever reason, your wife calls you in for dinner, or the kid.
Is it that time already?
Or the kid is beating up on the dog. When you come back to this that's already been tightened.
Sure.
We're going to continue here, put an assembly lube in the right side case, then we're going to move it out of the way, and we're going to start with the left-hand case, putting the transmission and the crankshaft together. I like Maxima assembly lube. I use a lot of different ones, but the funny thing is this smells like cinnamon, and it's nice. You're working with all these different fluids. It's nice when something isn't horrible. So, thank you, Maxima. I would appreciate some more at any time. All right, we're going to start assembling now the two halves together, installing the crankshaft and the transmission, shift drum, shift forks. Okay, before I install the crankshaft into the case, there's a hole here. This is the oiling hole that the oil pump pushes through the stator side. and feeds this, which then feeds this lower rod bearing. So I put oil down this feed hole until it comes out of that lower end bearing. Because we washed it, we washed all the oil out of it. I want to make sure it has some. Some will leak when it gets installed into the case, and it'll drip out when it's tipped. But I know that I've put oil in here and I've moved it, and that bearing is well lubricated. Okay, spin that, make sure it's all in there. And then we're going to assemble this into the case. I'm going to tip this, make it a little easier on ourselves, and we're going to work on the transmission. I need to replace 2 gears on this counter shaft, or excuse me, main shaft.
Now why are you disassembling the gears?
Disassembling the gears because this gear needs to be replaced. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but there's some pitting in the gear teeth.
Right on the edges of them.
And down inside.
Oh yeah, in the middle.
Yeah, that'll be very bad when that chips and breaks.
And this motor is going into one of our buddies, Kyle Percy. We want to give him a shout out. Your number 5 ranked ATV woods racer in the state of New York. Good luck this season, Kyle. You're going to have a sweet motor under you.
Absolutely. So installing this gear, there's a hole in that main shaft.
Let me see if I get a shot of that.
Yep. And you want to try and line up the hole in the gear. Sometimes they line right up, sometimes they're off just a little bit. There is a recessed groove within the gear, so oil does get to it. So now we're back to, we have to put that circlip back on. So we're going to put the new circlip in. And there's a right and a wrong way with this too. One side of this is flat, the other side is round. It's hard to really see it. The next gear set, this, when it goes on, you want the flat part locking into the groove. So if there's pressure against that circlip, you want the flat part in the groove. If it was flipped, it would push its way off the round part.
Okay. Cinnamon lube.
Yes, it's fantastic.
I've got some of that at home in the dresser drawer.
Oh boy. Settle down.
It's right next to my hopes and dreams.
So those are the 2 gears that were replaced. The reason I replaced this is you could see that the dog part of it, and that's what it's called, is rounded. So where it intersects into the other one, so it's like this, it gets rounded off and it has a tendency to pop out of gear when they get bad like that. All right, now we're going to assemble the transmission into the case. I'm going to take this gear off. Just simplifies things here.
Ah, for squeezing in the other gear set.
Yeah. And we'll install that back on. All right. Now we're going to go and put the shift drum, shift forks. This is the center shift fork yeah, or Honda, excuse me, they have lettering on it. So it says CP1, but C is center. They have EYL, that's left. And then they have RP1, that's right. So first one we're going to install is the center, which goes in on the right side. It's a single one. We're not going to put the shaft in yet. We just want to get it into place. Now they're labeled left and right. Left meaning this is the left case, so the left one goes in toward the bottom. They can really only go in one way once that, because the tabs are going to be facing in for the shift drum. We're going to install the shift drum. You really can only put it in one way. Now we're installing the oil pump shaft and pump gears. Okay, we're going to be getting ready to put the right side case cover on. I'm going to first install this gasket.
Is it time to make a sandwich?
Not yet, it's getting close.
What's that there?
This is an oil baffle that goes between the cases. I put a little bit of grease on it, it helps hold into the case.
Maybe once you get that greased, you can bring it over here. Just show us real close to the camera.
Just put a little bit of...
What is it, a screen in the middle of it?
No, it's just a metal reed.
Oh, okay.
I just put the grease in there. That helps hold it so when I go to install it won't fall. And having a little bit of grease on there won't hurt the gasket from sealing.
Slide it down evenly on either side.
Yeah, it can be tricky. The other thing you gotta watch for is that the shift drum needs to go into the bearing. All right, we're fully seated. We're going to get our case bolts and our brass, or excuse me, copper washers. Some of these bolts have copper washers. One goes underneath here, one here, one here. There's a tiny little triangle in each one of those areas that dictate where that goes. Just lightly snugging these down. We're going to go back over and torque them to 9 foot-pounds. do a crisscross pattern.
That's a wrap for this video. Mario did a great job assembling our lower cases, getting those sandwiched together with all your gears and bearings inside. Nicely done, sir.
Yeah, next video is going to be all the right side stuff, clutch, shift mechanism, shift shaft, counterbalancer, and then we're going to get into doing the top end in the third video, along with this installing the cylinder head and the stator side.
So it's going to be a multi-video, multi-part series on just how to rebuild a TRX450 engine. So if you don't want to miss any of it, what do they have to do?
They got to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.